Good evening, everyone. I'm Diana Kirk. I'm Roger and Marianne's youngest, best child, if I say so myself. For all the siblings, I can assure you that's what my dad would say to all of you if he were here today. And I'm honored to speak with all of you tonight. I'd like to start with the necessary thank yous, as everyone's been doing, for this wonderful day. An obvious and immense thank you is dedicated to the members of the ALS Association Greater Philadelphia chapter, who've helped make this event happen, and a special thanks to Taylor with the support of Marta and Ellen and their entire staff, who put in a ton of work and deserve a great big round of applause. Thank you to Greg and Connie Gross for allowing our dad's name to accompany the Gross family name on this great event. If you get a chance to talk to Greg or Connie, you realize just how selfless they are with their time and energy, and it's people like them that make fighting this disease easier over time. Thank you to the Old York Road Country Club, including head pro Jeff Sakina and club manager Jason Ecke. Our dad was a member here for 23 years, and we know he would be delighted with how the course was today and how the rest of the club looks. And a special thank you to all the golfers, attendees, committee members, volunteers, and of course donors. This event couldn't happen without your generosity. Having a successful charity event is definitely hard work, but we like this event to continue to be successful, and we can't do that without all of you. So give yourselves a round of applause. Last year, I was unsure I wanted to do this speech in front of all of my dad's people. However, when discussing it this year, I kept coming back to the memories of our dad talking in front of everyone. Whether it was him telling jokes at a party or him emceeing a sports banquet, his presence captivated a room. And this was something I noticed from a very young age. So when a disease takes away your father's greatest trait, you learn to use your own voice to stop this from happening to others, which is why I'm speaking with all of you tonight. So in addition, I selfishly feel a little bit closer to my dad talking to all of you, so I'm happy to share my thoughts on his behalf. When I was trying to think of what to say to everyone tonight, I kept coming back to this idea of what if. What if our dad was never diagnosed with ALS? What if we never got involved with the ALS Association? What if our dad got to meet all of his grandkids that are here today? Back in January of 2013, our family came across our first what if. Roger was being tested because he had these muscle twitches all over his body. There was talk it could possibly be ALS, but we were all so scared to hear the diagnosis. But before we found out any information, our dad wrote a letter to all of his kids. And the letter starts by saying, I want to write this letter to you prior to possibly learning of my fate tomorrow regarding the diagnosis of my muscle twitches. Obviously, I am praying and hoping that there's nothing seriously wrong with me and that I get a chance to live a long, happy, and healthy life with Mom and all of you. After this letter, we actually found out that ALS was ruled out for our dad, that those twitches were something called benign fasciculation syndrome, and they were not life-threatening. Well, what if that diagnosis was final? After a few months, our parents went to Johns Hopkins to get a second opinion, which then confirmed his official diagnosis of ALS in May of 2013. What if our family never had to deal with ALS? Over the next 21 months, we saw our lively father become trapped in his own body by this horrible disease. We never could have predicted how fast the time would go. We never could have understood what losing a parent or spouse would be like. And somehow, all of our what ifs were just that, what ifs. We did have to deal with ALS. Our dad would never meet all of his grandkids that he always wished he could. He didn't get to live that long, happy life that he wished for in that letter to us. Allow me to read our dad's words from a letter he penned in 2014 when he and our mom participated in the National ALS Advocacy Day down in Washington, D.C. This is less than a year after his official diagnosis, and he said, I had never known anyone with this disease, so I was unaware of how devastating it can be for the patients and their loved ones. Now that I am experiencing the ravages of this terrible disease, I know that we need support of every kind to find a cure for those suffering now and to prevent people from having to deal with ALS in the future. For us, the positive out of this tragedy is that we were able to get involved with the ALS Association per our dad's request. And now it's bestowed in each of us to continue to help the ALS community by raising money as we have today, so a cure can be found for this disease. Our dad had to pass from this disease so we can help our future families that go through this diagnosis. Now, if everyone is willing to participate for the remainder of the speech, if you're able to sit on your hands or put them behind your backs. I promise there's only a couple more minutes. Allow me to read again from that 2014 letter that my dad wrote. I've always been active. I can no longer participate in so many activities that have given me joy and self-satisfaction over the years. Those activities, they included golf and exercise. I played golf regularly from April through November. I cannot hold a club well enough to hit a ball, nor do I have the balance to take a swing. I was a man who regularly exercised 180 to 200 days per year for many years. ALS has taken that away from me. So as many of you know, Roger passed away 3.5 years ago. After you lose someone to this disease, part of you wants to block out the awful pain and suffering that your loved one just went through. You want to forget about how your dad was once known as this lively man became trapped in a body that was no longer his. You want to forget that you haven't heard his true voice in years. You want to forget that you have seen everyone close to him in their most vulnerable states. However, Roger instilled in all of his family members to not give up on this disease, even though he lost his battle. Just because he's gone, this does not mean that ALS should escape all of our lives. So we continue to fundraise with this outing and the walk to defeat ALS, to continue with Roger's legacy with the hope of curing the disease of our families. So with your hands unusable for the last minute or so, you may have wanted a sip of your water, maybe you had an itch on your face, maybe you wanted to shake somebody's hand that was walking by, or maybe you wanted a bite of your food. So this little activity is to remind you that all ALS patients have to ask somebody to help them with each of these small everyday activities. You can now release your hands. These small movements that take seconds for us can take minutes for ALS patients. The patients have to communicate that they are either hungry or have that itch on their face, and then the caregivers have to interpret what the patient is requesting and help him or her complete that small everyday task. Like I said, it's easy to block out the everyday struggles ALS patients go through because it hurts to see a loved one experience that every single day. But we cannot do so if we want to remember why we're here today. We do not want to see anybody else experience these everyday struggles because of ALS anymore. So we urge you to come back to this outing every year to help us fundraise. With your continued help, we can fight for that what if that we all hope to see in our lifetime. What if ALS didn't exist anymore? Thank you again for your time and your continued generosity. Great.